Well, thanks everyone for coming. And we're going to talk a little bit about kind of what it was like to make it, and then we'll actually have some live performances of art, including music and poetry and things of that sort. And then we'll have a late screening of the film as well for latecomers that were coming in. So one of the things that was really of the time that we were working on this, so you see the copyright was 2003, and we were working with Gary, and he was the sound editor, I was the visual editor. Michael here was the painter. You see Scott, who was the poet, and David was a producer and kind of wrangled us cats all into some craziness that it actually resulted in something. And it was an unusual way of approaching it. We had been watching, especially we were informed and inspired by the final session from Tarkovsky and from the film Andrei Rublev. And there's the last like 5-8 minutes or so of the film that just shows these beautiful paintings, and just kind of, it's very quiet, and it shows the images one after the other. And so we thought that was a great way of expressing art and image in a way that really lets you settle into the picture. And so we decided to do that, and then put it on top of the things that our lives were just full of paintings and poetry and music and all of that. And so it was a lot of fun to work on, and it was something, you know, we showed it at a Gary and I worked together on a series of things at the Rendezvous Theater that is down in Belltown, in which we curated a bunch of short films. This is all pre-YouTube and all of that. So we found visual artists and video artists that would make videos for it, and then we would have bands playing. We would have a band play and then show some shorts, and then a band play and show some shorts. And we actually premiered this at that event we called it Super Cluster. And so it was a really, really special thing for me and Gary to work on in that. So. But I want to pass it off to Michael as the director and let you talk a little bit about what you think.
Thank you so much for being here, guys. You're probably wondering, what the fuck was that? I liked Scott McKnight right from the get-go, probably about 26, 27 years ago. Everyone else was a musician, and he was a poet, and I was a painter, and we just harassed the hell out of each other. We met up in a bar every day, and at some point, I think we just kind of knew that we weren't going to make it, and it wasn't going to probably happen for us. So we thought, well, what would we do to make one last kind of triumphant gesture? I think we both agreed that we didn't like the wealthy dictating to us what the art world was and what mysticism was. And so we both had this very defiant chip on our shoulder. And I said, well, I'll paint 100 paintings and you write the poetry, and maybe we'll even record your voice. And we'll do that, and we'll, maybe we'll find musicians that we can, we have all these musicians around us. And he said, great. We both went to it. The next day I said, well, what do you are you writing anything? He said, sure, but I'm not going to show you. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to show you my paintings either. So I think the remarkable thing about the film is that we didn't know what we had. A couple of months later, he looked at me and said, I'm done writing. And I looked at him and I said, I'm done painting. And and we both ran up into the warehouse loft and like giddy school children and spent a lot of time just poring over what we had. And then we kind of went around to practice spaces and asked our friends and bands, play us your 4 or 5 best songs. At a certain point, David Brown was taken over and we were kind of handing things off to Gary Mula. I think the first time we went down to the Dutchman, it didn't go so great. But we rescheduled for a week later, and Scott took off, and Gary kind of turned to me outside and said, "By the way, what are we doing?" I have no idea, because that's so great. And so, about a week later, Scott did a walkabout on the Olympic Peninsula, came in, sat down, and in one take said, last call, okay, fuck it, I'm good. And that stayed that became part of the poetry. I was just really blown away in that one moment in time when he did the whole narrative in one take. First try, it was perfect. So I'm gonna hand this over to my buddy.
Mike's got to get back to the Catskills, and he's got a Chevy Suburban out there. And I was thinking about maybe, if you guys wouldn't notice, we'd be all right by Wenatchee at this point. Yeah, we both lived above Bad Juju, artist lofts there for years, and we've been into each other. Mike moved in, and I was like, "Who's this cat?" I was like, "Oh, here goes the neighborhood." Steve Gilbert was the bartender downstairs, and then we were in trouble. There was a lot of discussion regarding the Northwest Mystics. And Mike had, I knew the Northwest Mystics in a historical way. Mike was a little closer to the cut there, and so that was also like part of the subtext, I reckon. The first couple of times Gary was like, "What the fuck?" Down at the Dutchman. And I was like, that was pretty funny. And but Gary has a way of patience, and that his memorial at the right time, there was a eclipse. It was crazy, right above us. And I was like, "Yeah, that's Gary. He's coming back to fuck with us once again." And anyways, revisiting this is pretty wild. And thank you. I'm passing it over to Dave.
As the behind the scenes guy, it's kind of where I wish I was at the moment. So I don't know why I'm up front.
You started.
It was, my idea to put this together. So I'm just glad that we were able to do it, and I just want to thank everybody for coming out. So at the point, I'm going to pass it back.
So we're going to take a little break, but then Scott's going to read some poems, and Sean is going to sing a little bit of music from the film and some stuff special to Gary. And on your table tents, I encourage you, there's 2 QR codes. One of them is to get your own copy of The Changing Light. It's set up so that we'll be sending out access codes over the weekend if you're interested in that. But more importantly, the other QR code is for donations for Music Cares. And Music Cares was and is an amazing nonprofit that takes care of musicians in need. And they paid Gary's rent for a year. And so we are donating all of the proceeds for sales of the Changing Light over the weekend. And like I said, we'll be sending out access codes. If you decide to buy now, you'll get your access code probably on Saturday. But also donate to Music Cares and help musicians in need. And with that, let's relax a bit.